Hello people, today I will be showing you how to rig up a bow. And there are a couple tutorials online, but the latest one I could find was for Blender 3.1. I use Blender 4.0 because my computer can't really handle Blender 4.3 very well. It lags a little due to a lack of a graphics card. But basically, this should work on Blender 4.3 as well, and anything up to that point. I don't know how they'll change it in the future, but it should work up to there. And the first thing you need to do is have a bow. Boom, first step completed. Second thing you'll do is you will grab a single bone armature. From this armature, you will take the point and essentially just put this to put the tail down to where the head is on the z-axis. Then you can grab on the X. You can also rotate it to do the same effect. From there, you want to click 7 on your number keypad to get an overhead view, and Shift Z to go into wireframe mode. From there, you'll create a chain of bones, I guess is what it's called, with each bone taking a. If you're using a lower poly mesh like I am, you're going to want each bone to take basically the faces of one area, like these are doing here. And this will allow the bone to bend along that. Once you have those bones created and the entire chain is completed, you then want to add one more bone and put it along whatever axis, I guess, puts it kind of perpendicular almost to this bone. And for me, that is the y-axis. From there, you have every bone you need at this point, and you will take it, you'll duplicate it and right click to leave it in the same spot. You can then rotate on the Y by 180 degrees after you change one setting, which is up here. This makes it so basically it is taking where it basically changes where you're rotating it from. And in this case, we want to rotate it on the 3D cursor because it's already in the direct center where we want it. If it's not there, you can click Shift C, like say I do that, and Shift right click to move it. You can then click Shift C to put it back at the very center. From there, you want to take the thing you've duplicated and rotate it on the y-axis by 180 degrees. And from this point, you have it symmetrical and it will follow the bow lines. Then you want to grab, or you want to take this point here. Doesn't really matter which of the two bones you do, it'll end up being the same. And you'll extrude it on, in this case, the y-axis to make it touch the bowstring. Then you want to grab it along that same axis and put this front area at the bowstring. From there, we're going to name some bones. From there, we're going to name some of the bones. This one will be named String because it's going to control the string. This one is going to be named the IK underscore rig. The K should be capitalized. Well, doesn't matter for effectiveness, but helps for organization wise. And in this case, I will put IK rig, and you can do dot or you can do underscore. They serve the same function. In this case, I'm going to put right, or in this case, actually top would probably be better because we're working with a bow, and you generally hold the bow vertically. Though not always, but in this case, we will then put a. I've been I've been changing the armature, so now you got to go down here to bone to change stuff. So this is string. Why do I always miss the R? This is ik underscore rig dot t op top, and then you have ik underscore rig dot bot for bottom. And like this, it doesn't do a whole lot, but what we can do is from here, and we will add more bones later, but we've got to do the parenting first so that the automatic weights doesn't apply to the future bones. And in this case, what it should do is you got to go to pose mode, grab the string, and one thing I didn't show earlier that I'm going to show now is your string. In most cases, you want things that have more vertices. In this case, you don't. Otherwise, it will, when you move these bones, the string will deform and will no longer look like a string when you're pulling it back, and it looks all funky. And because of that, I generally just have one set of vertices right in the middle that this can grab onto. So I can go pose mode, grab this bone, do that. As you can see, we move these. It moves that as well. All we want to do is in pose mode, you want to grab this and go to this. It's like a bone, almost looks like a bone with a stake. And it's bone constraints. And you want to add inverse kinematics. It's in the tracking section. And you want to then take the chain length and count how many of these bones you have and apply it until it reaches all of them on each side. So in this case, also, one thing I forgot, you're going to need to unparent these bones. Let's just do, okay, that one's not parented today, good. Okay, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so my chain length needs to be 8. And from there, you will take this bone and apply it to the IK rig bottom for this side. And you will do the same thing for here, add a bone constraint, inverse kinematics, target the armature, and then the bone you'll target is IK rig top. And then make the chain length, in my case, it's 8. For the same reason as with that one. And what that does is it basically makes it so that I can move this bone and it will move all of that. Okay. Then what you're going to want to do is grab that bone, push it back some, go to edit mode, no, not edit mode, pose mode, apply poses, rest pose, and that basically the reason I had it up there was to make it, when I applied the automatic weights, it would grab those vertices. By applying that as a pose mode, the mesh will only deform when I move, will still, like, the weight will still be there, so if I move this, it still moves the bow, but this is further back, which is going to be needed. In fact, I should actually move it a decent bit further than that, and then apply the pose as rest pose. And that also makes it so your edit mode and your pose mode will match what they are. From here, what we're going to do is we are going to go to edit mode and duplicate that, change its name to tracking underscore, well actually I think I used dot, bottom, and for me I'm using bot for that. Then I will shift D, place that there, and I'm going to take this tail And okay, I will take this X value, grab this tail, place it in, and then remove the negative sign. Or if you're doing it reverse, you might need to add a negative sign. And basically it makes it so that they'll have opposite X values. Then I take this Y value and I add it to this Y value. And then they'll be in the same spot, just opposite, along the Y axis. And you do the same thing with the bottom. And if your bow is rotated differently, the axis you have to do this on might end up being different than the ones that I'm doing it along, but the same principles will apply. I moved the wrong one. That makes sense. Grab the tail. And then this one's y-axis. Let's see. And then we're going to take these bones and make their z 0. Should have probably kept it there in the first place. And now you can see we have this kind of weird thing. This is going to be tracking top. From there, it kind of is just going to be a lot of little adjustments to get it working properly. You can start by going to pose mode and take these tracking and add a bone constraint called limit distance in the transform. And essentially what it does is it makes it so if something isn't parented to another one, so in this case, like if I move this, it'll move all these other ones because of the inverse kinematics. But basically what it does, if say I target the armature and then apply this to the string, now when I move the string, this will stay within that same distance that it was at the start. Now you move it closer, it won't. And the string still moves this. And then if I take this IK rig bone and I add another limit distance and I apply it to the tracking bone, in this case the top one, I can grab along the Y and this will pull both the string and this area of the bow. I don't actually remember what it's called right now. But essentially, I just have to do that with both sides. And then you just have to move these around to try and figure out where the sweet spot is, I guess, for your particular bow. Limit distance from the armature, and then tracking the bottom. And this button here is really helpful. If, say, I move it in, because when you move these, you're going to have to move them in edit mode if you want to change how they're working. And so if I attach that to the string, now when I grab it on the Y, you have a semi-functional bow. It's still not great. There are still quite a lot of things that could be fixed. The first thing is changing this influence, because the bowstring is going to move farther than the ends of the bow as it stretches more. And so this is about as far as the bow can stretch, but if we want the string to be going further than that without it like straightening out like that, then what we're going to need to do is just lower the influence. So I'm going to put mine at 0.35 for both of these. And now we have a much better string. But it still leaves a problem, which is, if you notice, when I first start drawing, these things start moving forward a little bit. It's not a lot, but it's there. And bows in real life don't actually do that. And so what you're going to do to fix that is go to edit mode and basically just grab these bones and just mess with them slowly changing them. And each time you do this, you're going to have to click this button to reset the distance. Otherwise, they'll still stay the same distance. So, for example, I didn't move them enough for it to really matter. So I'm going to move one of these to change that. In this case, actually it's easier to see if I move it closer. Let's put it here. This bone is attached to this with a certain distance, and because of that, this gets pulled towards that bone. But it makes it so that when I'm grabbing this, it'll move that, but this one's not but this bone here isn't moving because it is still within that distance. So what you'd have to do here is you do this, click the X next to the distance button, and you can then grab on the Y and it will immediately move it because it is now at the very edge of that distance. And so I'm going to go back because I preferred how they were before. And we're then going to grab these and change the distance on them as well and get them properly set up. And like in this case, if you'll notice, that front thing became even worse, and that means I did not move them in the correct direction. And essentially it just takes fine-tuning to get it to where you want, which can take a while, but it is what it is. This isn't going to be the best bow tutorial. There are probably more efficient ways to do it, but this is the way that I found to do it, and since there are no other videos, I figure I'd go with it. And so now you have a bow that is relatively functional, and I'm actually just going to keep what I had at the start because it's relatively good if you're using it for something like a video game, which I'm using this for a video game, and the perspective is pretty far out. It's like way up here. People aren't going to really notice very much that front thing. Now, if you're doing some high rendered scene, it's probably not going to help a whole lot. Or like that's still going to be a problem somewhat. But yeah, that is what I found. Don't subscribe and dislike the video. I want to see how many dislikes I can get. Thank you.